Klingbeil in Washington. Diplomatic tensions between Berlin and Washington. On August 3, 2025, Germany's Finance Minister Lars Klingbeil travelled to the United States for his first official visit. The trip, originally intended as a signal for a new phase of closer economic cooperation between Berlin and Washington, turned into a diplomatic setback. Several planned high-level meetings were cancelled at short notice, and Klingbeil instead found himself in discussions with second- and third-tier representatives. Observers described a frosty reception, indicating deeper political tensions between the German government and the new US administration under President Donald Trump. A visit with a challenging context. Even before the trip, Klingbeil's visit was considered delicate. Since Trump's return to the White House, relations between the US and several European countries have noticeably cooled. The American government is pursuing a strictly national economic agenda and shows little interest in multilateral arrangements, as preferred by Berlin and Brussels. Klingbeil, one of the key representatives of the SPD-led German government, aimed to promote investment in Germany and strengthen transatlantic cooperation in the financial sector. However, the willingness of the American side to engage in talks remained limited. Key contacts, such as Finance Minister J.D. Vance or President Trump himself, were not available for personal meetings. Instead, Klingbeil met, among others, Scott Bessent, a state secretary in the Treasury Department, who holds no prominent political role in Washington. In Berlin, this treatment caused some irritation. Government officials emphasized that the talks had been constructive, while observers in Washington described them as a cold, obligatory meeting without political substance. Different political approaches. Tensions between the two governments are not new. During Trump's first term, there were repeated conflicts over trade, energy policy, and defense spending. Relations had eased somewhat under President Biden, but Trump's return marked a shift back to more confrontational tones. Trump focuses on deregulation, low corporate taxes, and a clear prioritization of national interests. Klingbeil, by contrast, advocates a model based on cooperation, strong regulation, and European integration. While the finance minister promoted a stable, sustainable, and socially responsible economic model in Washington, Trump emphasized in a simultaneous statement that the US would no longer be dependent on foreign interests. These differences made rapprochement difficult. In Trump's circles, Germany is increasingly seen as a morally instructive but economically weakened partner. Berlin talks a lot about morality, but less and less about performance, a Republican advisor told the Washington Post. Controversy over Klingbeil's past. Adding to the tension was an issue initially unrelated to economic policy: Klingbeil's past political activities. Social media reports circulated claiming that the SPD politician had been active in anti-fascist groups in his youth. This past was picked up by parts of the American right after Trump's administration officially classified the Antifa as a terrorist organization. Although the classification is legally disputed, it is widely used by conservative US media to attack political opponents. Several online platforms alleged that Klingbeil had connections to a group banned in the US without providing evidence. The German Foreign Office dismissed these allegations as absurd and emphasized that Klingbeil has always clearly opposed any form of extremism. Nonetheless, the headlines contributed to a noticeable strain on the diplomatic atmosphere. Upon his arrival in Washington, Klingbeil underwent unusually thorough security checks, a procedure rarely applied to sitting ministers, according to observers. Symbolic politics and misunderstandings. In his speech to investors in Washington, Klingbeil presented Germany as a reliable, democratic, and innovative partner. He highlighted the stability of the German economy, the energy transition, and corporate social responsibility. At the same time, he warned against a return to nationalist economic models. This passage was interpreted by American media as a veiled critique of Trump. commentators in the president's circle reacted sharply. Conservative Senator Marco Rubio stated that the US would not accept moral lectures from Europe. Klingbeil himself appeared surprised by the intensity of the reactions. In interviews, he spoke of misunderstandings and emphasized that Germany wanted to cooperate with the US on an equal footing. Nevertheless, the image of a confident but isolated minister had already spread. Media dynamics. Within a few days, the episode became a media sensation. Right-wing platforms in the US and Germany spoke of a rebuff for the German government. In Germany, representatives of the AfD particularly seized on the issue, portraying Klingbeil's visit as a symbol of alleged foreign policy weakness of the SPD-led government. On social media, claims circulated that Klingbeil had even been expelled from the country, a false claim not confirmed by any official report. In reality, he left the US as planned after completing his program. Nevertheless, such rumours reinforced the impression of a political fiasco. Transatlantic relations under scrutiny. Beneath the heated debate lies a fundamental shift in transatlantic relations. While Europe continues to rely on multilateral cooperation and international institutions, the US under Trump pursues a course that clearly prioritizes national interests over global agreements. For Germany, this represents a strategic challenge. The US remains the most important trading partner outside the EU, while Berlin's political influence in Washington is waning. The German government is attempting to counter this trend through enhanced diplomacy and economic cooperation, but meets with skepticism. Klingbeil's trip was originally intended precisely to achieve this goal, to build trust and open new investment opportunities. Instead, it highlighted just how wide the distance has become. Reactions in Germany. In Berlin, the SPD defended the finance minister. Klingbeil himself stated after his return that he had open and honest discussions and saw great potential for economic cooperation. Government spokespeople emphasized that the federal government works constructively with the US government, even if not in agreement on all issues. The opposition saw it differently. Representatives of the CDU and AfD spoke of a false start in American diplomacy. Particularly, the AfD used the case to reinforce its criticism of the SPD-led government's foreign policy. Party leader Tino Trupala stated that Germany must finally represent national interests again, instead of being lectured by Brussels and Washington. Background: Trump's new agenda. Since his return to the White House, President Trump has intensified his political agenda. He announced a series of measures aimed at greater economic self-reliance and reduced international dependence. These include tariffs on European products, a program to promote domestic energy production, and the reorganization of international organizations to strengthen US influence. This policy has drawn criticism in Europe, but enjoys broad support among segments of the American population. Trump argues that his course secures jobs and growth. Critics warn of a withdrawal of the US from international responsibilities. For German politicians like Klingbeil, this development is a dilemma. Berlin wants to maintain the partnership with Washington, yet rejects Trump's nationalist rhetoric and attacks on international institutions. A diplomatic balancing act. According to experts, the episode of Klingbeil's visit is less a personal failure than a symptom of deeper tensions. Relations between Germany and the US are in a transitional phase, says political scientist Kathleen Fisher of the German Marshall Fund. Both sides need to redefine what partnership means in the 21st century. In this situation, even small symbolic gestures carry weight. A cancelled meeting or a critical remark can quickly spark a diplomatic storm, especially when amplified on social media. Conclusion: a wake-up call for Berlin. Klingbeil's US visit highlighted the sensitivity of Berlin-Washington relations today. The episode shows that Germany must prepare for a period of more challenging communication with the United States. Differing political philosophies, economic interests, and societal values clash. At the same time, the case illustrates how quickly misinformation spreads and political debates become emotionally charged. What began as a flawed trip turned into a full-blown political controversy in a matter of days. Whether Klingbeil's visit will have long-term consequences for German-American relations remains uncertain. What is clear, however, is that the Federal Republic faces the task of defining its role in a world order in which the US acts less as a partner and more as a competitor.